Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly round of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here.
This is Becky.
Welcome to 2022.
Shocking. I'm not ready.
No one is, but we have to get up, be strong, and just get on with it, isn't it?
Power through.
All right, so let's talk about Z9 deliveries. If some of you heard that Z9, started to ship everywhere, all over the world. And if you look at a lot of comments under our recent videos where people say, I've got mine, and there's lots of people from Europe, from the United States, even from Australia, receive their cameras. So fingers crossed, hopefully some of you at least enjoying your new camera now and sharing your experience with us.
Yes, I do have some breaking news on that. Email I received just minutes ago in that the UK will hopefully see some more, because I know a couple of MPS guys and stuff got a handful. We're talking single digits. But apparently we will actually see another shipment within the next 1 to 2 weeks.
All right. So we don't know how many units yet.
No.
So, but the shipment is coming, which is really good. And obviously we've received the shipment when on 23rd of December. That's the first ever shipment came in.
If we can call it a shipment based on how many were in there, yes, then we can say that was the first one, the 23rd. And I think that kind of coincides with other places from what I saw, or from what I was told by some of the people within Nikon itself. The USA got the lion's share of allocations.
It's an interesting one because if you look at the Facebook groups, there's a Z Mirrorless Season Facebook group, and obviously Nikon Rumors, there's DP review forums where people discuss all things, and people say that basically the figures were anything from, let's say, 200 units to a major retailer in the United States to 3,000 units. I don't think 3,000 units is correct. I think maybe whole United States got 3,000 units, but the good news is that at least in the United States, a lot of people got their cameras. And then also Nikon USA, the NPS, they sent out email to NPS members. And what they say that if you're an NPS member and you pre-order your camera, let's say on day one, then they should fulfill their pre-order by mid-January.
Wow. I'd like that to be the case in the UK as well.
Fingers crossed.
Considering that the majority of our orders came through on day one. But that's very interesting. In the spirit of that, I actually wrote a blog article to kind of explain how, certainly at Grays and also within the UK, we've managed the orders of the Z9, but also what to expect if you have pre-ordered a Z9. So do feel free to go over and have a look at our blog. The article is the latest one on there at this time of recording.
Okay, well, hopefully that should eliminate millions of phone calls to all the dealers in the world saying, where is my Z9? Obviously, the shipments are quite small, so let's be honest about that. So they can only make an amount of cameras a month. And it seems to be that obviously the first shipment was quite large, at least in the United States. And then we will start to get kind of drips and drops every now and then. So the next shipment, according to Nikon Rumors, is scheduled for mid-January. Now, they don't really know which parts of the world is going to be. So hopefully everyone gets a little bit one. And there's a big discussion on the things like if they're just going to ship to one country or let's say one continent, or everyone is going to get a little bit. But it seems like we will start to get small shipments every now and then. And hopefully if you ordered your camera at least within, let's say, first months of the announcements, you should get them fairly shortly. Now, they're not so good news as well. Nikon Rumors at some point reported that some Japanese retailers like Yodobashi Camera, which is one of the big retailers and also big cameras, stating that on their website now, if you want to pre-order Z9 and you place in the basket, it says that the shipment is October 2022.
Wow.
A lot of websites got really trigger happy on this one, especially I've noticed it on other brand Rumors websites where they say, oh, if Nikon is going to deliver in October 22, the next shipment. This is not actually correct. And to be honest with you, from what I gather, this information is not concrete either.
Right.
So a lot of websites report it this way. So if you haven't got your camera from the first shipment on a day one, then your next shipment is going to come in October. Now, that's not exactly the case. What they say that if you order a camera today, so if you're going to go on their website now, pay for the camera, then you should expect to arrive in October. So at least it's an indication.
Oh, I see.
Looking at those ETAs as well, if you look at, let's say, B&H and the, infamous, 15th of December shipments,
yes,
which then got removed on 15th of December.
Yes.
So we know that all those actually, ETAs are placeholders more than anything else.
Yeah.
So in terms of this may not be correct, but also it also means that the shipment, we start to get shipments every now and then. So if you order your camera, let's say on the day one, or let's say within a first month, you should be getting your camera before October, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it this way, let's do a little maths here. Let's say hypothetically we had 100 orders. We had more, but that's fine.
Simple math. 100 orders.
100 orders, and let's say each batch we get 10. Again, let's hope.
Is it like it's like at school, you get 10 each batch and they come twice a month.
That's what I was going to say. And we get 10 every 2 weeks. Then at least we know that within 5 months we should have fulfilled all those prepaid orders, right?
You see, I would need a calculator for that. You got to just spot on, like 5 months is going to be there.
Hopefully. Well, that's assuming that we get 20 a month, basically.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
So that's kind of what we have to think with. Obviously, if people have ordered at the tag end of that or didn't order right at the beginning, then they might be waiting a little bit longer. I personally wish that Nikon had said, and this is just my personal feeling, I wish that they had said delivery date April 2022, for the simple reason that that would have given them a nice long runway.
Yeah, I agree.
And then they could have fulfilled all the NPS orders before April.
Yes.
And then the general public could expect theirs from April onwards.
That's true. I absolutely agree with you. I think when, let's say, we haven't discussed this in our end of the year podcast, and it was supposed to be in part 2, which didn't happen. It may happen at some point.
Life happened.
Exactly. So, but Nikon in 2021 was on my naughty list. And I'll tell you why. It's not because we didn't have good products. Obviously, the year was superb, and especially Z9 is getting so many awards right now as the best products of the year.
Yeah.
Communication.
Yes.
That where I think Nikon is lacking, and I think they definitely need to improve it. It seems that in the United States, they have better communication with dealers. In UK and in Europe, not so great. I personally hope that we start to get a lot more clear messages to the dealers, but also to the customers as well. Because at the end of the day, if customer is placing their camera, we feel you because obviously you've paid your money, you want your camera, and obviously the wait is difficult to bear. I don't like to wait for the items I ordered. Unfortunately, nowadays, a lot of things that you want to order, especially the things that just came out, there's a waiting list for them. So there's never a free stock on those things.
Still waiting for my PS5.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's been a year. I got my last year, one of the first batches, but I had to pre-order, I think, in March.
Yeah.
So it came out, in October, November. I had to place my order in March, right? From several dealers. And again, that's the point I want to make as well, that a lot of those Z9 pre-orders, a lot of people place an order with several dealers. And that means once they get the camera first, they'll cancel a pre-order with another dealer, unless, of course, they one or two professionals may have a backup, etc. But that also means that once people start to get their cameras in and cancel pre-orders, a lot of dealers should go through their waiting list a lot quicker than October next year.
Yeah. As I said in my blog, interestingly enough, there's always a fall off from the sort of registered interest list to the people that actually then pay for the product. So the Z9 was rare and unusual in that we had an almost 100% hit rate from the I'm interested in this camera, whether the person went on the list when the development was announced or even before they knew that it existed. But
that's true. We already have, absolutely. We already have pre-orders on Z8, let's say, which is not even an indicator this is going to happen. So
exactly. So it's interesting that the Z9 kind of broke those records, but it does mean that when it comes to it, if people have put their names on multiple lists with multiple dealers, as you said, then we may have some fall off and then we may have some free units.
Well, with deliveries out of the way, let's move on to other Z9 releases. It's going to be a Z9 podcast. I think we missed about 3 weeks with all the holiday and festive season. So there's going to be a lot of little news. For example, now you can download Z9 manual and reference guides. Those are both available on Nikon website.
Handy.
Absolutely. And there's also N-LUT guide, the technical guide for specification of N-LUT profile for video work, and also suggested autofocus settings for sports and wildlife photography. So that's all available on the Nikon website. But now, there's a couple of things that a lot of people found on the forums, and also I kind of had a brief look through 914 pages of it. So what did you do for Christmas? Well, downloaded the guide for Z9 and just read it with my kids under the Christmas tree. But there's a couple of things I want to point out that I found interesting. So let's start with a chart that shows how many air features you can assign to custom settings buttons. And this chart, I'm going to put it on the screen up, looks huge.
Yeah, I'm actually just looking at how many places you can assign things too.
Yeah, it's one of the first cameras that allows you to not just assign function buttons, but also a lot of other buttons, which is quite useful. And I hope that it will trickle down to perhaps Z8 or Z7 Mark III.
Yeah.
There's also an interesting thing about focus ring on the lenses. Now, there's a function button F9 and F10, which allows you to assign focus ring rotation range, choose how far the focus or control rings on Z-mount lenses must be rotated to go all the way from the minimum focus distance to infinity.
So it means that you can actually adjust the throw.
Exactly, which is pretty good because on some lenses, like for long lenses that we've tested, sometimes you have to move your hand twice to go from infinity to, let's say, close focusing distance and vice versa.
Yeah.
And with Z lenses, you would be able to make it slightly faster or slower depending on your preference, which is really nice.
Very interesting.
And then we also have control ring response. So choose how responsive the lens control ring is when assigned the aperture, power aperture, exposure compensation buttons, ISO sensitivity, etc., etc. Remember those rings that now we can assign not just to aperture setting, but also to ISO setting, etc., etc. So
yeah.
Again, that's something we didn't have before.
And it's quite niche how responsive it is quite a niche thing, but still very useful. I remember we had someone who brought in a camera and a lens saying the setup was faulty because the shutter speed kept changing. And I was checking bracketing and one thing and another. And then I found out that they'd assigned easy shutter speed essentially to the control ring. And it was so sensitive. Just a tap of that would change the shutter speed. So this is an interesting custom setting for sure.
I keep always reminding people, if you assign a custom setting and change custom setting on your camera, make sure you remember what you did.
Write it down.
Because a month later, if you come back, you haven't used the camera, you come back and you're not sure why the camera performs this way.
Yeah.
That's where you normally get a call is, my camera is broken.
Yes, exactly. Now they've also, what's this 8K internal time-lapse?
Supported. Yeah, so we now have internal time-lapse. The maximum shooting time is 23 hours and 59 minutes.
Good gracious. But wow, nearly 24 hours of 8K time-lapse.
Absolutely. If you want to see that beautiful sunrise and sunset.
Cool.
Off your garden.
Yes.
That's the way to do it, isn't it?
Backyard.
And then the rear screen menu colors can be switched to red, which is quite useful for astrophotography.
Yes, indeed.
Again, something I didn't know at all because I'm not really an astrophotographer, but I can see it's going to be quite useful. Again, that's something that a lot of Nikon cameras could use in the future, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
The next one up, we also have a firmware for Z9, which is going to be 1.10, and it will be released on January the 5th, so which is tomorrow.
Which will be yesterday by the time this comes out.
Exactly.
Yay.
So what's in there, Becky?
So the first thing they've said is that it will greatly improve the duration for high-speed continuous shooting. So when shooting at 20 frames per second in high-efficiency RAW plus JPEG Basic Large, the duration will improve from the previous approximately 3 seconds to the world's longest, supposedly, which is approximately 15 seconds. So they're extending the length of time that you can hold that shutter button down at 20 frames per second.
Okay, just to keep in mind that obviously if you just shoot in RAW, high efficiency RAW, the buffer is huge.
Yes.
So this specific setting is actually to do with RAW plus JPEG.
Yeah, exactly. They also have the option if you're shooting high efficiency RAW plus JPEG Basic Large or fine with a few additional connotations there, then the duration improves from approximately 3 seconds to now 8 seconds. So basically the larger the JPEG files that you're recording along with your RAW files, then the slightly shorter the duration. But either way, it's still improved over the original 3 seconds, which is great.
All right, so that's pretty good. And then what they say as well is additionally, a future firmware update will add a variety of video functions as well as further improve the operability and functionality for both stills and videos. So this is just a small firmware. It's not the 8K 60 frames per second that's Nikon mentioned that's going to come out, I think, in February or so. But it's a small one just to get you started. So it's a nice upgrade, especially if you're shooting, let's say, RAW and JPEG. So I know that a lot of people shoot small JPEGs to go with their RAW file so they can effectively give it to the client, especially if you have, let's say, JPEG on one card and RAW on another card. So then you can give your unedited image JPEGs to the client and then you got your RAWs to edit with. Normally, portrait photographers do use it quite a lot, or even wedding photographers.
Yeah.
Now, if you have any suggestions for the future improvements, do let us know. For people who got the cameras, I don't see much information online yet, but we have Brad Hill, who is quite well-known Canadian wildlife photographer. He already put a list of improvements shipment that you would like to see in cameras.
That's right. Things such as adding recall shooting functions, hold option, which is very specific because there is a recall shooting functions custom setting in the camera already. So I assume that this is some alternative to that.
I know at least one of our viewers will be happy with this. His name is Woody, and thanks for all your tips, by the way.
That's right. He's also got add release mode to the photo shooting menu, release mode as an I menu option, return ISO auto sensitivity as a my menu option. This is very specific.
Absolutely.
I know where to find these things, but I guess it would be quite nice to have it in my menu.
That's true.
He also would like them to tweak the sensor shield behavior options because, as some of you will probably recall, the Z9 has this sensor shield on it to stop you from getting dust on the sensor when you're changing lenses.
I think it's by default option is turned off actually, so you need to activate it. At least it was on our camera.
I can tell you with a brand new one straight out of the box, it's on.
Oh. Becky
I'm saying no
had
more.
an experience with a production version of Z9.
Brief experience, yeah.
So I'm sure you'll share with us more info potentially in the future videos.
I will. I'm saying nothing else now. He'd also like to add configurability of the wide area AF modes, which I agree that's quite useful. There does need to be more configuration on that wide area AF. Tweak how subject recognition categories are selected.
Okay.
And add custom setting menu bank to custom controls for buttons. So there's some very specific things. To be honest, if you don't have one of these cameras in your hand or you haven't used one, then you might not understand why these are on his wish list, but they do prove very useful if you've had a little bit of hands-on experience.
Absolutely. And then he also have a reader's wish list, which they emailed him what they want. But for that, do go and read his blog. So there's a lot of information on Z9, not just that as well.
Exactly. And those who are into unboxing videos can head to the Nikon Rumors website from the link that we'll include in the description box if you'd like to see a whole unboxing. It's not one of ours. We didn't do an unboxing, but...
No, we're not into kinky stuff. Can I say that?
I don't know. Whatever. So if you're into unboxing videos, then do go and have a look at that because there's at least one person who's done it.
Honestly, whatever floats your boat.
Next up, Nikon have released updates to Camera Control Pro 2 and N-Log 3D LUT with support for the new Nikon Z9.
Very interesting. Now, I want to ask our viewers, do you use Nikon LUT? And if you use it, tell us how good it is, because I have no idea.
Moving swiftly on.
The next one are Photons to Photons published a photography dynamic range chart on their website. Now, some of you know DxO Mark website, which measures dynamic range and noise levels. So the Photons, it does very similar things. So they were the first ones to publish dynamic range for Z9. So I did some comparisons. So first comparison I did with Z6 and Z7 Mark II cameras. So if you look at them, up to about 500 ISO, the dynamic range is actually slightly smaller compared to Z6 II and Z7 II. But then from 500 ISO, it jumps up and it basically becomes roughly on the same level. Now, compared to Sony A1 and Canon R3 cameras, we also see very similar behavior.
So interesting.
And if you notice, actually, R3 and A1 behave very similar way. Your dynamic range is slightly smaller on lower ISOs, and above 500 ISO, it kind of jumps up and it increases. So I guess those cameras designed specifically for low light usage. So therefore, it's basically aimed for the photographers who wouldn't use the cameras at 100 ISO per se.
Yeah, exactly.
And then looking at comparison with D6 and D850 cameras, that's an interesting one. So we can clearly see that dynamic range on lower ISOs is better than D6.
Yes.
And then D850 would perform very similar to Z7 Mark II. So in terms of this, they're going to be quite similar. Again, if you're shooting on lower ISOs, D850 or Z7 II will be a better choice. So for landscape and portrait photographers, you will benefit slightly from extended dynamic range on those cameras. But then from 500 ISO and higher, that's where Z9 will be slightly better compared to those cameras.
Yeah, and actually the Z9 clearly shows that it's better than the D6 at about 800 ish. That's interesting.
So it's very good. It's very interesting. What it tells me also that D850 for us DSLR users, well, we are both. We kind of dip in both ways. But if you still have D850, it's still a fantastic camera. So in terms of this, just looking at the camera, it's been released 4 years ago or even 5? Who knows? I'm sure our readers will put the release date. It's still a fantastic camera for image quality. But obviously, if you're a mirrorless user, Z9 packs so much technology that a part of dynamic range the performance is there as well.
There you go.
All right, well, now let's move on to some new accessories that are popping up for Z9 cameras. So we now have the video rigs. We also have L plates and rain covers as well from companies like Small Rig. So Small Rig has a cage which starts at $99 and then it goes to $150 with a little handle. The L plate costs £59. I think L plate is quite useful. I think we should order one and test it for our demo one.
Sure, the Small Rig one.
Absolutely, yeah. So that looks pretty good. And then the company Pro Media Gear, which I haven't heard of before, they have L bracket for $110 plus additional accessories, which are optional.
Then we have Really Right Stuff, which is also a brand that we do know. And they are doing plates priced between $99 and $250.
Yes, Really Right Stuff is made in the United States. So if you do like your, let's say, local manufacturers, then you will pay premium for that, but you'll get manufactured in the United States. And obviously, place like Small Rig, I think they make them either in Hong Kong or China.
Yeah. And then we have Kirk Photo, who say they do have one coming soon. They don't have prices confirmed, but they are producing a camera plate.
Oh, stay tuned then.
Yes.
All right. And then we also have a waterproof rain cover from a company called Porter Brace. So it's done with all those layers of Velcro and other things, you know, so that makes it really waterproof. So available at B&H. I haven't seen it on anywhere available in UK, but I'm sure because it's coming soon, places like Pro AV in UK will stock them.
Excellent. Now, some other third-party news for you. Profoto issued a press release saying that the collaboration with Nikon has meant that they have compatibility with the Z9 from day one, which means that if you are looking for a professional flash system, studio light system for your Z9, if you have one yet, then Profoto is worth having a look at.
What do you think about Profoto, Becky?
It's expensive. That's what I think about it.
Yeah, good but expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it would be really nice to see Nikon collaborate, as we mentioned in the last Nikon report from before the holiday season, that Godox would be a great collaboration. Yeah. It's a happy medium.
Absolutely. I'm sure a lot of people will point it out that Godox almost as good as Profoto, but
without that premium price tag.
Exactly. But of course, you know, people who are using Profoto, they will buy Profoto again and again. So that's how good it is.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So now Digitutor, which is a Nikon thing, they have their own channel and they publish educational videos for different users. Let's say like now they publish 3 videos on Z9. We're going to cover 2. The first one is basically shows the buttons on the camera and what they do. But the last 2 videos that they publish, part 1 and part 2, go through the menus of the camera. So if you want to see what specific menu does, what the custom settings do, etc., have a look at those videos in the link in the description below.
Absolutely. ZP Productions published a video testing the Z9 EVF camera latency versus the Canon R3 and Sony A1. So if you're one of those people that is interested in the latency of the EVF, this video is quite telling. You can have a look and make your own conclusions.
Absolutely. To be honest with you, I think that people who stuck with the brand they use, let's say Nikon people, they won't care as much if R3 is better or A1 is better. So I'm sure it would be nice to see and say, yes, it's really good. But from the people who are choosing a new system, let's say, to shoot with or get into photography, and they want to spend so much money, they want to get Z9 or something like this, and they're choosing between, let's say, R3 and A1, it's going to be quite interesting to see that. And obviously, the viewfinder experience for mirrorless cameras, which effectively has small LCD inside, is quite important because people using DSLRs, getting used to optical screen, and now have to switch to electronic screen. That viewfinder experience becomes quite important because it's not actually the same as optical viewfinder.
Yeah, it's true. I have personally gotten so used to having an EVF now that I kind of come to expect it. Whereas I wasn't convinced at first. Do you remember the little Nikon One system? Do you remember that with the little tiny viewfinder?
The one that doesn't exist?
The one that doesn't exist. Well, the worst promoted camera, but actually a very good, that one of Nikon's first forays into mirrorless, let's say. The EVF in that was horrendous and made it unpleasurable to use.
There was a lag and there was a slow refresh rate, wasn't it? So everything felt like it's running not even at 30 frames per second, but something like 15 frames per second.
That's right. But I had a similar experience even when I went over to Fuji.
Oh, yes.
With the X-T10. I had that same experience of, wow, I thought EVFs were going to be better at this point. So the Zs are actually a huge, huge step up.
Absolutely. And I had experience with X Pro 1, which came out much earlier than X-T10.
That's right.
And even X-T10, there was a huge improvement over X Pro 1 viewfinder. So the technology has moved on. And actually, the Z9 viewfinder does feel almost like an optical viewfinder. And the reason why I say it's almost is because when you look at it, it's quite large. It's very, like, I didn't notice any lack of resolution. I thought it was quite detailed, but also refresh rate is so high that when you move the camera, there's no delay. So it's effectively, you feel like you look through the optical viewfinder.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, ZP Production published another test where he basically looked at the focusing speed of the cameras, etc., in comparison with A1, AR3. So do have a look at his videos. Obviously, now when the camera is out in hands of photographers, we will start to see more tests. Now, what we want to ask you as well, if you want us to test something with Z9 and something else, do leave your suggestions in the comment below, because we hopefully will get a Z9 soon to test, and your suggestions will help.
Exactly. We obviously can't test compared to non-Nikon cameras, except for the few that we might have at our disposal, but certainly against other Nikon Z cameras or even DSLRs, if you want us to run it through its paces on a specific test, we'd be happy to give that a go.
Absolutely. Focusing speed compared to Nikon F3 or Nikon F2AS.
F3AF.
The light meter of S3 versus Z9. You name it. L35AF versus Z9 build quality.
Yeah, that's the one that you want to do.
Absolutely. That's my kind of thing. So let's move on to more videos. Now, a chap called Varun Suvono published a video which is called Z9 in Action Boxing. So it's beautifully made, great music, etc. Obviously, boxing events is always indoors. It's always quite harshly lit.
Very, very bad lighting.
Absolutely. So have a look how camera can cope in such rough conditions.
Matt Irwin also published a few Z9 videos over the festive period on his channel, as well as another round of discussions with Rishi and Seth. So do go and have a look at Matt's channel.
Absolutely. Good discussion there. And also we have cined.com, which is a website which is aimed at videographers. They also have their YouTube channel as well. So on their YouTube channel, they published a video which is called Nikon Z9 Review, our mirrorless camera of the year for video.
Wow.
That's quite a statement coming from the guys that specialize in videography.
That's so impressive. Okay.
And that's not something that you would tell about Nikon cameras as a best videographers' cameras.
Particularly considering that they only kind of reached a few people's hands on Christmas Eve.
Absolutely. And also, obviously, when I say that, you know, we don't mention the Z cameras as video cameras, obviously people who know how to use them, they swear by them. And the Z6 and Z6 Mark II are considered one of the best Nikon video cameras, especially, you know, in terms of video quality, they're fantastic. Now, Z9 is on another level. Have a look at that video, look what they have to say. I would recommend them. And then also on their website, which is cined.com, they also published an article which is called Nikon Z9 Lab Test, Rolling Shutter, Dynamic Range, and Large use test. So one of the findings that I found interesting about rolling shutter. So rolling shutter, they measured at 14.5 milliseconds. That's in 8K H.265 mode at 25 frames per second, which is about 1 millisecond better than Canon R5 and 2 milliseconds better than Sony A1.
Okay, good comparison.
Absolutely. There's more on latitude and dynamic range, etc. So have a look at that.
Friend of the shop, Moose Peterson, also published his initial Z9 settings on his blog. We will be hearing more from Moose about the Z9 very soon, so watch this space on that. We also have Nikon Z9 Wildlife Impressions by Libor Weichenbacher.
He's wildlife photographer. Again, if you're into bird watching and wildlife, I would recommend to have a look at that. Again, you know, real world experience with a real production camera is probably better than pre-production from YouTuber.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to awards. So DC Watch, which is a Japanese website, gave Nikon Z9 a Camera of the Year award. We also have DP Review Reader's Choice, where they give Z9 the award for Best Product of the Year. It won by a mile of 53.7% votes. The next runner-up is Sony A1 at 25.8% of total votes.
Wow. So if you have a look at that graph, which was on screen just now, then you can see how many votes the Z9 clearly got, which means it ticks the boxes for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, my mom voted at least twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She has no idea what the Z9 is.
Absolutely. But it's not DP Review Choice. It's DP Review Reader's Choice. So it's basically comes from people like you and me.
Exactly. Now let's talk about another new release, which is the 100 to 400. We did get a tiny sampling of 100 to 400s on the same day as the Z9.
Really good.
Believe it or not. We have not been able to fulfill all our orders yet. However, I'm hoping, and this is a secret hope that I'm now sharing with the world, that the next batch will fulfill all our prepaid orders. And then from then we can start to contact the waiting list of non-prepaid orders.
Well, that's good news then. So it seems like we potentially, if you still haven't ordered one, you can place your order now. And that means that you'll get your lens very soon. And who knows, maybe you'll get free stock at some point. You never know.
Yeah, I think the 100 to 400 we will hopefully see in free stock sooner rather than later. The 24 to 120 f4, just as another new release, that we fulfilled all our back orders, and now we're just waiting for more stock to come in so we can contact the waiting list, but we should have free stock very soon.
Ooh, fantastic.
I
know. FTZ II, however, was very disappointing. Not quite as disappointing as the Z9, but on par with that. So we don't have
really small quantities,
like tiny quantities of the FTZ II. So if you were the lucky like 2 people.
That's interesting because in the United States, everyone got their orders pretty much fulfilled. And I believe either B&H or RAM, at least according to Nikon Rooms, at the time we record this, had a free stock of those. So,
FTZ II.
Yeah, so it seems again that maybe because FTZ II is primarily designed for camera like Z9, because you can't put FTZ1 and hold the grip of the camera really well with it. So it seems like that they got them kind of pretty much one-to-one attachments, and they all went to the United States.
Exactly. Yeah, we didn't even get one-to-one in that. Everyone who ordered a Z9, you'd think that they'd send the same number of FTZ2s, but it was not that good. Saying that, I suspect that the reason the USA have had such a large share is because over in the USA, obviously, it's a much bigger market in the USA, first of all. We have a little island here with lots of very, very keen Nikon lovers, but not quite the same level and numbers as they do in the USA. But also we have a lot of people who are switching over to Nikon. And I think that Nikon maybe wanted to send stock to the place where they were going to get the most converts, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, for people who are getting Z9s, FTZ2 is a must-have, and that's pretty much the only reason I would say to upgrade from FTZ1 to the FTZ2.
Agreed.
Obviously, it doesn't have that little battery, tripod mount thing, exactly. And that when you hold the camera in portrait mode on Z9, that's where it becomes very uncomfortable to hold. So that's what FTZ2 eliminates this issue, basically. Obviously, FTZ2 is a little bit lighter as well. But if you got FTZ1 and you're not planning to buy Z9, let's say anytime soon, then there's no reason to upgrade at this moment. I mean, I would just maybe pick it up next time when I would buy a brand new camera or something like this, because in terms of functionality, they're basically the same.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So on the subject of the 100 to 400, Brad Hill did actually publish his early impressions and thoughts about the lens on his blog. There are some key points.
Yeah, what he says basically, optically speaking, is flipping amazing. With only a few exceptions and at all distances tested, the images produced by the Nikon 100 to 400 lens were functionally indistinguishable from the images produced by all other lenses that he tested with. Now he tested it with versus 70-200 2.8S lens, now DSLR f-mount 120 to 300 lens, and 180 to 400 lenses as well.
I had heard actually that the 100 to 400 was as good as the 120 to 300 and the 180 to 400, which I thought could not be possibly true.
At the price point, that would be incredible. At the price point that it is. It didn't make any sense to me. And that was from someone from Nikon. And I thought, well, maybe they just haven't tested it properly. But you're wrong.
I just can't possibly believe it. However, that seems to be what we're hearing. So another thing that Brad Hill said was that the AF performance of the 100 to 400 is excellent, and it definitely exceeded his expectations. He said, it's simply an exceptional lens based on how all my other Z series lenses performed. I expected the 100 to 400 to be sharp, but it's even sharper than I expected.
Splendid. DP Review also published hands-on with Nikon 100 to 400 lens, and here's what they say. Overall, though, 100 to 400 is shaping up to be a very powerful lens for Z mount, and we are looking forward to shooting with it. So basically, no conclusions as of yet. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Shitek also published a review on the lens and translated from Chinese, so please bear with us. They said this lens has excellent sharpness at 400mm, excellent dispersion and breathing control over the full focal length, and stable and effective VR anti-shake. Their nitpicking, as they say, was that the lens has some vignetting when fully open, and that the blur for them, so the bokeh, I would assume, is not quite soft enough. The starburst is not long enough, but overall image quality has reached a high level.
They're quite picky, aren't they?
They are quite fussy. I was surprised. But anyway, there you go. We also have some news on the 24-120 f4 from DP Review. They have done a hands-on review with it, and they have a sample gallery, so you can have a little look at that. They said, our initial impressions of the 24-120 f4S are very positive. Based on our shooting so far, it looks like an excellent addition to the Z-mount lineup. While it can't match the very high optical standards set by the higher-end 24-70 2.8S, it does offer some advantages over the costlier lens. Most obvious benefit is the versatility afforded by this extra telephoto reach, but lighter, lower price, etc. All the things. I mean, we are hoping to get our hands on one as well. After we posted our little video on Boxing Day, which we actually shot a few weeks ago in Greenwich. Yes. It was quite a while ago with the 18-140 and the 24-200, a few people commented, oh, could you do the 24-120? Would have been great if you'd included the 24-120. It didn't really, it wasn't a thing when we did that.
I think we should do all 24s, all the mid-range zooms, just, all the mid-range lenses that they released. It's just, it's worth trying them out. So
it is. And we will definitely be reviewing as soon as we can get our hands on one from Nikon, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, anyone from Nikon watching. We will do a review on the 24-120 f4 and also compare it to the F-mount counterpart, which was one of my favorite lenses.
Here's another thing, what I've read on the internet. And that's about 28-75 lens.
I forgot about that lens.
Which is made by Nikon. According to rumors, Nikon licensed 5 designs from Tamron. So there will be 4 more lenses to come. So stay tuned on that. So maybe next week we'll discuss what lenses Tamron should manufacture for Nikon. But let me tell you about a Tamron lens that received a Reader's Choice Award at DP Review. It is Tamron 35-150 f2 2.8 DI lens.
Ooh.
Do you think it's something that Nikon should license from Tamron?
No, we've got enough in that range. Can we have something more longer?
But it never stopped Nikon.
No.
So in terms of this, why not?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Let's move on.
David Bush actually published a ZFC fast track guide on the internet. So you can buy that.
I guess we're going to be getting some at some point when they land in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, they usually take a few months to come through. But yes, we would like to stock that. We do tend to stock all the Rocky Nook David Bush guides. So when they're available, we'll get them in.
All right. And now is the segment where we call the things we don't understand. Normally, I read the title and Becky reads the description.
Okay.
The first one up, Nikon introduces the Digital Sight 10 microscope camera and also a bunch of lenses for it.
Yeah, so the microscope camera is called Digital Sight 10 microscope camera. Enables acquisition of both color and monochrome images with a resolution of 6,000 pixels across a large field of view using a single camera.
Absolutely. I just want to point out that the name is Digital Sight 10 microscope camera because we haven't repeated enough of that name.
Sorry, I just was reading it and you can cut that bit out.
No, it's perfect.
Keep it, whatever.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's the thing. Right.
It's a microscope. We know what they do. We don't know how the specifications are being measured.
Yeah.
But it's a new one and it's supposed to be really good. Now, coming back to the news that we have above that. So Nikon is releasing also 7 what they call objectives for the microscope. It's basically effectively lenses for the microscope. So with different magnifications. And you can use them on that new microscope and also other Nikon microscopes. And if Becky wants to read the blur, she can do the blurb.
I will give it a go. Nikon said they are pleased to announce the release of 7 models of CFI Plan Apochromatic Lambda D series objectives for biological microscopes that support observation with a large 25mm field of view and enable chromatic aberration correction across a wide wavelength range. Then they do this whole blurb on in the field of science, things happen and therefore this is great. You should buy one.
Okay, well, that's wonderful news, Becky. Thanks for reading that.
You're
because
welcome.
I can't. Let's move on to third-party news. So we had quite a few third-party lenses and adapters being released. So the first one up is TechArt new TZG01 adapter that lets you mount Contax G mount lenses to Nikon Z mount cameras.
Yeah.
Contax G1 and G2, the autofocus rangefinder.
Yeah, this is something else. So that's quite fun that somebody decided to actually release an adapter for that. The adapter will not only let you use those lenses, but also has an autofocus motor. It will support IBIS and all of the different AF area modes. And it's priced at $299.
All right. Have you seen how much the G1s and G2s are going on eBay?
No.
The G2 with 3 or 4 lenses start at £2,000 plus.
Did one of the Kardashians use one recently?
No, Zendaya has T2.
Oh, I see.
I only care about Zendaya.
No one else.
No one else.
She's so cool.
She's so cool.
Okay, right. Next up, Venus Optics Laowa. Is that how you say it?
Laowa.
Venus Optics Laowa Argus 45mm f/0.95 FF lens for Nikon Z mount has been announced. So this lens, which I'm not going to repeat the full name again for my own sake, is a full frame 45mm f/0.95 with 13 elements in 9 groups, 15 aperture blades, minimum focusing distance of 50 centimeters, and weighs about 835 grams, priced at $799.
It's not bad, isn't it? 835 grams for f/0.95 lens. It's pretty light, isn't it?
I would be interested to see how that holds up against some of the wider... I mean, 51.2 from Nikon is just something else and out of this world and is considerably more expensive. But I'd be interested to see how one of these lenses performs.
Well, this is manual focus, but it's a fraction of the cost of 51.2.
Yeah.
My question is, can you buy this Argus 45mm f/0.95 lens at Argos?
Probably not.
It's a very niche joke for our UK views.
That's right. TT Artisan also released a 90mm f1.25, which is now available for the Z mount.
Not bad.
So its closest focusing distance is 1 meter. It has all the mount options, not just Z, but also Canon and Fuji and all the other
PlayStation
people.
mount,
Yeah, exactly. And it's priced at $435.
It's not bad, actually, for 1.25 lens. You know, it's a bit on the heavy side, but it's priced reasonably at $435. Again, manual focus lens, probably not as great as current modern Nikon Z glass, but at a fraction of the price, could be a fun lens to use.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the next one up is new Nissin MG60 flash for Nikon coming in January, aimed at Nikon mirrorless cameras. Remember that collaboration that we talked about with Profoto that we mentioned before and Nissin? So we have Profoto on expensive end and then Nissin on affordable end.
Yes.
So that flash is basically, it's not a cheap flash. It's going to be $450, okay?
Okay.
But it's small and light, aimed for mirrorless system because obviously something like SB910 looks a little bit chunky on something like Z7 or Z6 cameras. But it's got a guide number 60 at 200mm focal distance and 32 at 35. So you got the range between 35 and 200.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and actually it goes to 24 as well. And you can use a wide angle panel which pushes it to 16 millimeters focal distance. Takes 4 AA batteries.
The interesting thing is that it's compatible. It says with radio wave wireless TTL, which would assume that it works with Nikon's advanced wireless lighting system potentially. I mean, it doesn't say that, but if it's got radio compatibility...
Well, they call it NAS, which not stand for Network Attached Storage, but actually Nissin Air System.
Right.
So who knows? But I think that effectively, if they have collaboration with Nikon, they make sure that it works with the Nikon system as well, their own one.
Yeah. Last up, we have Viltrox, who released a firmware update version 1.0.5 for the Viltrox AF85 1.8Z lens. The firmware should improve the stability of the lens. This was a lens that was actually reviewed by Rishi.
Yeah, it was the first AF lens from Viltrox. So yeah, if your lens is unstable, definitely update your firmware.
Yes.
Let's move on to review section. Now, DP Review published a review for 24-70 2.8 lens. Well, that's been a while, but finally they wrote a review, and here's the things that they like and they don't like.
They gave it an overall score of 87%. They like the fact that it's lightweight and quite compact for its class, that it has comprehensive weather sealing, that it's sharp and free of offensive optical defects, that it has decent macro performance. And by that, they just mean close up, really, because it's not true macro. Handy multifunction OLED display and works well for video. But they don't like the fact that it was more expensive than the DSLR equivalent, that the AF isn't quite as fast, that there's no linear focus response for video, that the bokeh can be a little bit on the busy side, and that the lateral CA performance, albeit easily corrected for, could be improved.
So those are chromatic aberrations, basically.
Exactly.
I mean, in terms of sharpness, the Z2470 2.8 is definitely just another league compared to F-mount version. So there's no way around it. One thing when we talk about the people who say, I'm going to stick to my DSLRs, and people say, well, I switch to mirrorless, etc., etc. I mean, it's always great that people use different systems. You choose what you like. But one thing that the new lenses, if you look at the ultimate sharpness, then mirrorless systems do definitely outperform the F-mount design. So that's just due to new mount, due to way of manufacturing, designing the lenses. But also, yeah, I think things move on with the time, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. For your weekend read and watch segment, we have Nikon, the 1001 Nights number 80. And this is on the rather niche Nikon Series E 100mm f2.8.
Yeah, very niche.
It is. It's the very tiny little telephoto. It was actually an E-series telephoto lens, and it was known for its size. So go and have a look at that.
But if you want to have a really good 100mm manual focus lens, you can't go wrong with 105 2.5.
It's the best of the best.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have a video called The Glacier. This is Thomas Peshak's Glacier Expedition with the Z9. He's an acclaimed National Geographic photographer, conservationist, and Nikon ambassador. And the film, very thought-provoking, very beautifully made, incredibly cinematic, has been published on Nikon Europe's YouTube channel. So go and have a look at that using the link in the description box.
Absolutely. And then the last video that we have for you is not even a video, it's a movie. And it's Simon Marsden's Haunted Life in Pictures.
It's available now on DVD. Legendary photographer Simon Marsden powerfully argued that unseen spirits can reside in the architecture of the past. There it is.
I'm a very good hand model, isn't it?
That's right. His classic photos provided a guide tour of ominous sights from Irish ruins to Stonehenge to the darker side of Venice. It's a very eerie film. Gray himself is one of the producers, and I did some photography in it as well.
Incredible.
A little bit. So there you go. You can purchase that from our website now and all good places where you buy your DVDs, but it is available on the Grays Westminster website.
Fantastic. Whew. And that's a wrap. That was a long one. We had to cover a couple of weeks full of wonderful news from Nikon.
That's right. Absolutely. Thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube, or if you're listening on a podcast platform, a follow, perhaps even a review. It would be most appreciated. We would very much appreciate it if you'd be willing to vote for us in the Amateur Photographer Good Service Awards. We have just the last day or two left to get our votes in. So if you are able to vote for us, please follow the link. We'd just love you forever if you did.
Absolutely. And if you don't just want to follow us on YouTube, but also want to check out our social media accounts, we are available on the Instagrams of the world.
Yes, on the internet. You can find me at Rebecca_Danese on Instagram.
And I'm at MySpace at Konstantin Becky. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.